Hey guys! Today we're diving into another truly horrifying case. If you want to support my channel, make sure to subscribe and stay active. It really helps me out. I'd be super grateful for that. Let's get started. A brilliant and meticulously crafted plan often seems flawless on paper. But when it comes time to put that plan into action, countless unforeseen complications, challenges, and overlooked details tend to surface. What truly seals its failure, however, is often the inconsistency, irrational decisions, and shockingly poor judgment of those involved. The story of an immigrant from Iraq named Shahraban is a chilling example of how an uncontrollable desire for revenge can spiral into something horrifying and tragically senseless. Her need to settle the score with her ex-husband clouded her judgment, consumed her entirely, and ultimately led to the total unraveling of her identity. What makes this case especially heartbreaking is that the only victim in the entire situation was an innocent young woman who had placed her trust in the wrong person. Shahraban was born on April 30th, 1999, in a small village in Iraq, into a humble, traditional family. When she was 6, her parents moved the family to Germany, settling in the city of Ingolstadt, where Shahraban eventually started school. Her parents were strict and deeply religious, trying hard to instill in their daughter the traditional values of their homeland. But Shahraban was growing up in a different world, one where she quickly absorbed the culture and mindset of her new country. Even at a young age, Shahraban showed signs of being strong-willed, independent, and fiercely defiant. She didn't like being told what to do, often did the opposite of what was expected, and wanted to break free from old-fashioned norms to live like a modern, free-spirited young woman. While still in school, she dreamed of building a career in the beauty industry, aiming to become a popular stylist and beauty influencer. She spent hours watching makeup tutorials online and used all her allowance money to buy cosmetic products. She was convinced she'd one day open her own beauty studio or even launch her own cosmetics brand. But in pursuit of her goals, Shahraban often resorted to emotional outbursts, manipulative tactics, and playing the victim card. One way or another, she always got what she wanted. At 15, she met a young man named Ruan, who was 17 at the time. Like Shahraban, Ruan was originally from Iraq, but had moved to Germany with his family when he was very young. They had a lot in common, and their connection grew quickly into a romantic relationship. The two knew their families wouldn't approve of their relationship, so they kept it secret, meeting in quiet, out-of-the-way places around town. But one day, Shahraban's cousin happened to spot the couple. Instead of reporting them to her parents, he tried to blackmail her into something deeply inappropriate. Shahraban refused to tolerate that kind of treatment. She went straight to her parents and told them everything about the relationship and the threats from her cousin. Her parents were shocked by both revelations, but Shahraban knew the cousin had lost all leverage over her. As for the rest, she was ready to handle it on her own terms. Her parents forbade her from seeing Ruan, but she ignored the ban and kept meeting him in secret. The family fights became more frequent, but Shahraban stayed firm in her decision. The moment she turned 18, she and Ruan made their relationship official and got married. After that, she cut off contact with her parents for over a year. Both Shahraban and Ruan were ambitious, driven by dreams of a better life. Together, they opened a small hair salon where Shahraban worked as a makeup artist and skincare specialist. Business was going well and slowly expanding, and it started to bring in a solid income. It looked like their dreams were finally within reach, a promising future just ahead. But that hope quickly started to unravel. Their marriage was only truly happy during the first year. Shahraban's personality, intensely jealous, short-tempered, and highly reactive, began to dominate the relationship. What started as arguments behind closed doors soon turned into public confrontations. Her outbursts weren't limited to their home anymore. They spilled out into the open, drawing attention wherever they went. Shahraban's jealousy knew no bounds. She was suspicious of nearly every woman her husband interacted with. Sometimes, her emotions boiled over so intensely that she even lashed out at clients at their salon if she thought they were being too friendly with Ruan. This kind of aggressive behavior took a toll on their family business, but she was beyond reasoning. What had once been a marriage slowly turned into a constant cycle of drama and emotional outbursts. One day, Sharaban caused a scene at the cafe where the couple usually had lunch during their work breaks. She lost control during an argument, hurling whatever was within reach at Ruin. One of her throws landed a dessert squarely on the table, and people sitting nearby. That public meltdown got them banned from the establishment, as the owner made it clear they were no longer welcome. The incident made waves in their community and became a hot topic among acquaintances and neighbors alike. But the attention and public criticism did nothing to stop Sharaban's behavior. If anything, her confrontations with Ruan escalated. What began as arguments became physical confrontations, and Ruan, unwilling or unable to retaliate, became the one taking the brunt of it. Still, the idea of divorce never came up. Strangely enough, it seemed like both of them were just resigned to it all. In 2020, when the pandemic hit and lockdowns were put in place, the couple found themselves confined to the same space day in and day out. Oddly enough, the forced proximity led to a brief reconciliation. They managed to rebuild some connection, and by the following year, when restrictions eased, they jumped back into business with renewed energy. Things seemed to be on the upswing, and in 2021, Sharaban treated herself to a sleek, brand-new black Mercedes-Benz. Owning her own car gave her a fresh sense of freedom. She could come and go as she pleased, without explaining herself to anyone. Her confidence turned bold, borderline defiant. She started frequenting nightclubs and other nightlife hotspots, meeting new people, especially men. These encounters were often short-lived, casual flings, or the occasional two-date affair. Eventually, one of these flings turned into something more. Amid her whirlwind lifestyle, Sharaban met a man named Jacob. What began as another casual romance quickly turned into a passionate relationship. Despite openly stepping out on Ruan, she still policed his behavior, checking his phone, accusing him of cheating, and even following him on occasion. Her bond with Jacob grew stronger, and for a time, she seriously considered leaving her husband for him. Then, unexpectedly, Sharaban found out she was pregnant. She had no doubt who the father was, and wasted no time telling Ruin, not only about the pregnancy, but also that she was leaving him for her new partner. Ruin was crushed. He knew their marriage was broken beyond repair, but the public embarrassment was unbearable. As for Sharaban, things took a turn she hadn't anticipated. Jacob, caught off guard by the pregnancy news, told her he wasn't ready to be a father, and that marriage wasn't on the table. Confused and emotionally overwhelmed, she found herself isolated. That's when Ruin's family stepped in. Seeing an opportunity, they pressured her hard and ultimately convinced her to end the unexpected pregnancy. It was obvious to everyone around them that the relationship was falling apart, but neither Sharaban nor Ruin rushed to make it official. They continued living under the same roof, even as the tension between them grew unbearable. Sharaban carried deep resentment, not just toward her husband, but toward his family as well, especially after they pressured her into ending the pregnancy. One day, in a moment of pure rage, she stormed into the home of Ruin's brother and lashed out. She attacked both the brother and his wife with a stun device, causing chaos and frightening their sons and daughters. It was a turning point that couldn't be ignored. After several more confrontations that turned physical, Ruin finally took legal action. He filed for divorce and obtained a court order preventing Sharaban from coming near him or his family. However, there was still the matter of the business they had built together, legally registered in Ruan's name, and he had no intention of giving up the salon. With the marriage over, Sharaban lost access to the salon entirely. The court would now decide its fate. Most of Ruan's family and friends sided with him, leaving Sharaban isolated and bitter. She moved into a rented apartment, withdrew from social life, and began developing a dangerous plan for revenge. In her mind, the only way to strike back was to fake her own passing and frame her ex-husband for the crime. If everything worked, Ruin would be sent to prison, and she would disappear, free from everything. To make the plan work, she needed someone, specifically, a young woman whose appearance could pass for her own. It was a chilling idea, and while it sounded absurd, Sharaban approached it with alarming determination. She began scouring social media, scanning one profile after another, collecting information, analyzing photos, and shortlisting potential targets. Eventually, she found someone who fit the criteria perfectly, a 23-year-old waitress named Khadija. Shahraban learned through social media that Khadija had grown up in foster care, which meant there were likely no close family members to raise concerns right away. Like Shahraban, Khadija was an immigrant, originally from Pakistan. She had moved to Germany as a young girl with her father, but he was later incarcerated, and she was placed in a group home. Despite the hardships of growing up alone in a foreign country, Khadija remained optimistic and outgoing. She had dreams of breaking into the entertainment industry, working in television, or acting in films. She regularly went to auditions, casting calls, and talent shows. Shahraban saw that ambition as the perfect opening for her scheme. After double-checking every detail, Shahraban was convinced she had found the ideal person. Khadija was about the same height, had a similar build, and their facial features were strikingly alike. Even their fashion sense was nearly identical. In real life, they could easily have passed for sisters. In April 2022, Shahraban created a fake account on a popular social media platform, posing as a talent scout. She built the profile carefully. It looked legitimate, gained followers, and regularly posted about auditions and casting opportunities. Everything seemed authentic, and by mid-June she reached out to her intended target under the guise of being a casting director for a well-known German rap artist. Shahraban messaged Khadija, claiming she had been selected for a music video shoot and inviting her to attend an audition. Khadija was thrilled. She immediately said yes and was already dreaming about her big break. She happened to be a fan of the artist and decided to message him directly to express her excitement and ask for a few details. That's when she learned that no such shoot was planned and no casting was happening. Khadija quickly realized someone had tried to deceive her, but she couldn't understand who would go to such lengths or why. She blocked the fake profile, leaving Shahraban scrambling to come up with a new plan, one that couldn't fail. Over the next 2 months, she carefully crafted another fake identity, this time presenting herself as the owner of a new beauty salon. She reached out to Khadija again, this time offering complimentary beauty treatments as part of a promotional event for the salon's grand opening. The only thing Shahraban asked for in return was permission to take photos and record video of the makeup and hairstyling process. Khadija, seeing nothing suspicious, agreed. There was only one inconvenience. The salon was located across town, and getting there wasn't easy for her. But the salon owner promised to pick her up personally and drop her back off after the appointment. Shahraban made sure not to leave any detail unchecked. She began watching Khadija closely and even got the same haircut. She adjusted her hair color slightly to match perfectly. By the time the day came, the two had almost identical hairstyles. To make the plan foolproof, she took additional steps. About a month before the meeting, Shahraban moved back in with her parents, asking for forgiveness and pretending to want to reconnect. Her parents, unaware of her intentions, welcomed her home with open arms. In Shahraban's twisted scheme, they were meant to be the ones to discover the body and mistakenly identify it as their daughter. Shahraban arranged to meet Khadija on August 16th around the evening. She asked her to wear a dark blue dress, one she had seen in a photo on Khadija's social media. Shahraban had already bought the exact same dress for herself and made sure to wear it several times in front of her parents that day, so they would remember clearly what she had on. Before leaving the house, Shahraban told her family she was going to meet with her ex-husband to talk about settling the business matters outside of court. She acted nervous and said she was worried about how the conversation would go. As she left, she promised to be back by that evening and asked them to wish her luck. After leaving her parents' home, Shahraban got into her black Mercedes and drove off. Around 5 p.m., when her mother tried calling to check in, Shahraban's phone went straight to voicemail. At first, the family didn't panic, but as the hours passed and there was still no word from her, concern began to grow. Once night fell, her parents could no longer sit and wait. They decided to go look for her themselves and headed toward the neighborhood where their former son-in-law lived. On their way, they spotted Shahraban's Mercedes abandoned on the side of the road. It was unmistakable. There was no way she would just leave her car like that. Something was clearly wrong. The car had tinted windows, making it difficult to see inside in the dark. But through the windshield, they could make out a figure lying motionless in the back seat. They tried to open the doors, but they were locked. Panicked, they called the police and requested emergency medical services. When officers arrived, they unlocked the vehicle, and what they found inside was chilling. A young woman's lifeless body was sprawled across the back seat, surrounded by a pool of blood. Later, forensic examination revealed more than 50 stab wounds, many of which were targeted at the face, neck, and chest. The brutality of the attack left no doubt. Whoever did this had no intention of letting the victim survive. Although the victim's face had been disfigured beyond recognition, Sharaban's parents identified the body as their daughter. She was wearing the same dark blue dress she had left the house in. Her purse, with her ID inside, was lying nearby, and her bracelet was still on her wrist. Word of the horrific crime spread across town almost immediately, especially since the car had been found in the area where Sharaban had once lived with her husband. Naturally, suspicion fell right on him. Her parents told authorities she was on her way to meet her ex to discuss business matters and never returned. Now, her vehicle had been found with a body inside. Police moved quickly to bring Ruin in for questioning, but by the time they reached his place, he was gone. Realizing the situation could point to him, he had vanished without a trace. This disappearance only made him look more suspicious. After all, their breakup had been messy, the business dispute had turned ugly, and there was no love lost between them. He had motive, and now, seemingly, a reason to run. Still, something didn't sit right. Despite the parents' identification, officers had lingering doubts. The victim was found in Sharaban's car, wearing her clothes and carrying her ID, but the extreme damage to the face seemed intentional, possibly meant to prevent proper identification. Then came another twist. The day after the discovery, a woman named Samira came forward to file a missing person report. Her friend and co-worker, Khadija, hadn't shown up to work, wasn't answering calls or messages, and hadn't been seen since the previous evening. Authorities launched a search and were struck by how closely Khadija resembled Sharaban. The DNA analysis confirmed what investigators had already begun to suspect. The body found in the car did not belong to Sharaban, but rather to the missing waitress, Khadija. The confirmation changed everything. To make matters worse, new evidence surfaced showing that someone had recently posted online, looking to hire someone for an attack, offering 30,000 euros for the job. That lead traced back to Sharaban and her new boyfriend, Shaya. Initially, they had tried to find someone to carry out the act, but eventually decided they could handle it themselves. Their plan, at least in theory, was simple. Stage a violent crime, frame Sharaban's ex-husband, and send him to prison. But what came after? The couple clearly hadn't thought that far ahead. The sheer recklessness of the scheme stunned investigators. Despite faking her own death, Sharaban didn't even try to lay low. Instead, she and Shaya continued living their normal lives in the same city where everyone knew them. That decision would prove to be their undoing. Sharaban was arrested just 2 days after the crime when she walked into a cafe for a meal. Several customers recognized her immediately and notified law enforcement. When officers arrived and took her into custody, she quickly gave up Shaya's location, attempting to shift all blame onto him. The two, who had once plotted a cold and calculated act together, were now throwing each other under the bus. For all the meticulous effort they had put into the planning, their explanations fell apart when asked about the aftermath. If everything had gone according to plan, if Sharaban had been officially declared dead and Ruin sent to prison, what was her next move? Stay in the same town where people could recognize her? Where would she get new identification? And with media coverage of the case running nationally, she wouldn't be able to disappear anywhere in Germany, or even in Europe. Their financial situation didn't help either. All they had was the small amount of money Sharaban had withdrawn from her own account before staging the act. They had left the car behind with Khadija's body inside, believing it would add credibility to the deception. But they had overlooked a critical detail. Sharaban, declared dead, would no longer have any legal claim to the business she once shared with Ruin. They hadn't considered that investigators could and would use DNA, dental records, or fingerprints to confirm a victim's identity. Once in custody, their relationship quickly unraveled. The love that once bonded the two was gone. Now, it was every person for themselves. Shaya claimed that Sharaban masterminded everything, planned every detail, and carried it out on her own. He only helped her disappear afterward. But Sharaban's version painted a very different picture. According to her, it was Shaya who decided to go through with the act, while she had backed out at the last minute. Right on schedule, a sleek black Mercedes-Benz pulled up in front of the building where Khadija lived. Sharaban introduced herself as the salon owner, while Shaya played the part of her personal driver. Khadija felt uneasy, even startled, by how much she and the owner looked alike. They weren't just similar. They looked like twins and were dressed nearly identically. Sensing her discomfort, Sharaban quickly brushed it off, claiming it was just part of a branding strategy for the salon's upcoming promotion. Once the three of them were in the car, Sharaban acted as if they were running late and insisted they take a shortcut. Shaya drove them off the main road into a deserted, undeveloped area. There, he suddenly claimed they had a flat tire and needed to get out of the car so he could fix it. The moment Khadija stepped out, he attacked, using a knife, striking repeatedly in the chest, face, and neck. He didn't stop until her face was unrecognizable. After the attack, Shaya placed the body in the back seat, changed into a clean set of clothes he had brought along, and returned to the driver's seat. The car's tinted windows made it nearly impossible to see inside, so the couple wasn't worried about being noticed. They drove to the area near Ruin's home, left the car parked casually along the roadside, and walked away, unconcerned about being seen or recognized. They checked into a hotel in a different part of the city and carried on as if nothing had happened, frequenting public places and continuing their normal routine. The trial that followed would shock the country. After the crime came to light, Ruin went into hiding. He remained off the radar for over a year while the investigation unfolded. Eventually, he explained that even after the authorities cleared him of suspicion, he feared that Sharaban, despite being behind bars, would find some way to get back at him, and as it turns out, he had good reason to be afraid. While in custody, both Sharaban and Shaya allegedly tried to arrange further attacks by hiring others through prison contacts, hoping to silence potential witnesses. Thankfully, none of those attempts succeeded. During the trial, the two turned on each other. Each claimed the other was the mastermind, and neither showed remorse for what had happened. One witness, a man named Alan, testified that he had originally responded to an online ad offering payment for an attack. After receiving a €5,000 advance, he simply took the money and vanished. It was after this scam that Sharaban and Shaya reportedly decided to carry out the crime themselves. Fearing the police might track him down and implicate him, Alan went to the authorities voluntarily and confessed everything. What baffled investigators throughout the case was the complete lack of logic behind the plan. It was clear that Sharaban's primary motive was revenge against her ex-husband, but no one could make sense of what she thought would happen afterward. After staging a violent crime and faking her own death, she made no effort to hide. She stayed in the same city, carried on with her usual life, and had no long-term plan for survival or escape. She hadn't even considered how she would support herself financially going forward. Sharaban's defense attorneys leaned heavily on these flaws in the plan, arguing that her intentions were confused, the motivation weak, and that she would never have followed through without Shaya's influence. They claimed it was he who took matters into his own hands, lured by the promise of financial gain. But the court didn't buy it. In December 2024, both Sharaban and her boyfriend were found guilty of a brutal, premeditated crime committed in coordination with one another. They were sentenced to life in prison, with no possibility of parole. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support means a lot to me, and you can help my channel grow by hitting that like button, dropping a comment, and sharing this video. Your engagement really makes a difference. See you soon.